year I will be chairing the
Through the chair, can I just remind trustees that it's incredibly important that you speak very loudly into the mic? Otherwise, those online are not going to be able to hear the proceedings here this evening. So you need to get the mic up.
I'll call on Trustee Xavier to do the opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of the journey, bless our preparations this Lent. Throughout this holy season, may we fast from hurting words and say kind words, fast from sadness and be filled with gratitude, fast from anger and be filled with patience, fast from pessimism and be filled with hope, fast from worries and have trust in God, fast from complaints, contemplate simplicity, fast from pressures and be prayerful, fast from bitterness, fill your hearts with joy, fast from selfishness and be compassionate, fast from grudges and be reconciled, fast from words, be silent and listen. Help us to be faithful to a fast that brings new life. We ask this through Christ our Lord, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Trustee Xavier. I'd like to call on Trustee Thomas to do the land acknowledgement.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on sacred Indigenous territory and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for being the stewards of this land.
Before we go on, I'd like to welcome everyone who are here in person, from our guests as well, those who are viewing us on Zoom. Good evening to you and welcome. We're now at A4, approval of the agenda. I want to point out to you that you should consult the top sheet for G2 because of provisions to item G2, student mental health and well-being. As well, we need an addition to M4A and M4B, the in-camera items. So would someone make a motion?
Through the chair, the motion will be to approve the addition of M4A and M4B to the agenda.
Trustee D'Souza.
Right. Trustee D'Souza has made the motion. We need a seconder, Madam.
No.
Through the chair, you don't need a seconder in committee.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no declarations of interest.
Through the chair, with apologies. Now you need to approve the full agenda. You need to seek approval of the full agenda. That approval was just to get 2 additions to the agenda because
okay.
they came out after it was public.
We need a motion then to approve the full agenda with the additions.
I'll move, Mr. Chairman. Stefano.
Moved by trustees Stefano Pascucci. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's Mario speaking. May I speak for a second? On a point of order, not a point, well, a point of order, yes, for lack of a better term. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Sure. So
Well,
go ahead, Trustee Pascucci.
thank you. To Marianne. Marianne, do we, I'm noticing that our chair is asking for approval. Should we go the opposite as opposed to saying any against as opposed to approve? Is there any benefit about doing it that way?
Through the chair, proper parliamentary procedure would be to ask for all of those that are in favor and then ask for all of those who are opposed
Okay,
and announce the vote.
okay, announce the vote?
Well, announce the result, whether
Yeah.
it's
Passed or failed, passed or
approved,
no.
passed or failed.
Okay, all right, that was just on a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we move forward on this at the next meeting, maybe? And because I want to make sure we do it correctly.
Through the chair, we can implement it this evening
Okay,
because we're able to see. So trustees are going to have to raise their hands. Those online are going to have to raise their hands whenever a vote is being taken as either you approve of the motion or you are not in favor of the motion.
okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
You very
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
proceed. We're at item A6, approval of the minutes, Faith and Program Committee meeting of February 14th, 2023.
Through the chair, we need someone to move the minutes.
Moved by Trustee Xavier. All in favor? Carried. Opposed? Carried. Do we have business arising from the minutes?
Through the chair, there's no business this evening arising from the minutes. Well, sorry, there is, but that was attached and that would have been approved when you approved the minutes.
So we're now, we have no pastor's remarks for item B, and no awards and presentations, item C, and no delegations, item D. We're now in item E, updates, information, reports from trustees for receipt. Do we have a report from Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no reports this evening.
Thank you. Any good news items? Seeing none, we'll go down to item F, updates, information, reports from committees for receipt. And I believe there's none. Okay, on to item G, updates, information, reports from administration for receipt. Item G1, Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board, Library Support Services, Superintendent Murphy.
Thank you and good evening. And as referenced, Superintendent Murphy will be presenting this report this evening. It's on page 10 of your e-agenda.
Good evening, and through the chair, I'm going to invite the team from Program and Learning Services and Library Services to come forth to present the information contained in the report.
Good evening, through the chair. The Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board Library Support Services provide access to print and digital resources for our staff and students. The library team maintains just under 1.5 million print books that include fiction and nonfiction, picture and easy read books, graphic novels, and teacher resources. Digital resources include streaming platforms, ebooks, subject-specific resources, and reference materials. Melanie Quintana, Academic Coordinator of Early Years and Elementary Curriculum, and Greg Smith, Supervisor of Library Services, will be discussing several library services offered to the system, which are integral to the operational effectiveness and efficiency of our libraries.
Good evening, through the chair. Thank you for inviting us to speak about library support services. My name is Melanie Quintana, and I am the coordinator of early years and elementary curriculum. Before I introduce my colleague, I'd like to let you know that we've provided you with a collection of picture books to view. I would also, at this time, like to introduce my colleague, Greg Smith, who is the library services supervisor.
Good evening. Library Support Services manages library collections, systems, and spaces to support curriculum and help educators foster in students a love of reading, learning, and discovery. We are comprised of 41 library technician staff who support all our elementary and secondary schools. The role of library technicians is to organize, catalog, and maintain library collections, which include books, feature, and online resources that address current issues, curriculum enhancements, and Catholic social teachings. Library Support Services manages and maintains a circulating collection that is approximately 1.5 million print and digital resources. The above graph represents circulating print materials in both panels over the last 8 years. You will notice that there is no data for the 2020-21 because for most of that year, schools were closed due to the pandemic. We are seeing a return to pre-pandemic level circulation in schools for the 2022-23 school year. Currently, our libraries include print books over 1.5 million, which include fiction novels, nonfiction books, picture books, graphic works, beginning chapter books, and easy readers. And for digital resources, we feature up to 38,000 streaming videos, over 1,500 electronic books, over 42,000 newspaper and magazine titles, and reference and encyclopedia e-resources. Library services have played an integral part of managing new resources and devices that have been purchased and distributed system-wide. These resources include Chromebooks for Edwin, kindergarten iPad kits, mythology kits, Growing in Faith and Growing in Christ books, Haggerty teacher books, Trailblazers books, Sankofa series. Resources are cataloged in the library system where they can be tracked and managed at each school. Tracking devices and resources through the library system allows the management of this inventory to be done centrally and can also inform future purchases. Library Support Services manages the integration of our digital resources with the online catalog, where students and staff can access these digital resources remotely through the student webpage. It is through this DPCDSB library portal where students can find print materials in their school libraries and access 45 digital resources that contain approximately 200,000 multimedia digital assets that include videos, magazines, newspaper articles, and encyclopedias to support curriculum content from grades 1 to 12. Here are some of the digital resources DPCDSB subscribes to: Curio, Digital Theater, Criterion, Naxos Music Library, Learn 360, Audio Cinefet, Gale, and National Film Board.
In addition to managing and maintaining the circulating collection, Library Support Services works collaboratively with Program and Learning Services and tendered vendors to host a vendor book fair at the Mississauga Convention Center. DPCDSB teacher librarians from both panels were provided with a supply day to attend the event where they can view and purchase new titles for their library. Library Services collected all new books on-site and processed books at a central location, so books can be delivered to school libraries shelf-ready in a timely manner. This year, the event was expanded to include an hour-long professional development session for teacher librarians. The speaker was Dr. Nicole West-Burns, and she spoke about selecting and approaching texts with an equity and anti-oppressive lens. Each teacher librarian was given a copy of Cultivating Genius by Goldie Muhammad. The Forest of Reading is a secular reading program that is supported by the Ontario Library Association to foster a love of reading in all students kindergarten to grade 12. Each year, 10 titles from each category are chosen, which represent Canadian authors, illustrators, and publishers. Library and Program Learning Services provide equity throughout the board by supporting schools to participate in this program if they choose.
Library Support Services continually promotes print and digital resources that can be found in the DPCDSB library collections through teacher training sessions, Library and Support Services SharePoint, Bibliotalk newsletter, and monthly teacher librarian meetings. They play an integral part in the operational effectiveness and efficiency of our school libraries and learning resource management.
This concludes the report from Program and Learning Services, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for clarification?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. It's Rassi D'Souza.
Trustee D'Souza, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for this presentation. Very informative. My question is about slide 2. Well, I've shared a graph saying that this is circulating collection. At its peak, it was at 1.2 million books for the elementary grades. And then there's a dip in 15-16 to go, which takes it down to just 1 million or a little below 1 million. Is there any reason why 200,000 books were not circulated, or the collection went down in general? We lost 200,000 books? Or are these the books that are actually picked up by students and utilized?
Thank you for the question. We can take that back. We need to date the increase in number of online e-resources that we've got, and also look at what our culling process has been for that year in terms of keeping our collections current. But that will require our library team to look specifically. There will be a specific reason for that.
And if you go further down, then in 17-18 again, it goes up a bit, and then I would assume the circulation went down because of COVID. Am I right in assuming that?
Yes, and digital resources.
Sorry?
Yes, there is an increase. There is an increase in print circulation and digital resources.
There's an increase. In which year?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I noticed that the elementary circulation goes down from the year 14-15 to the year 15-16 by approximately 200,000 books. Then there is a slight increase in 2017-18, and then it just goes downward. My assumption is that circulation went down because COVID started creeping in through the world.
Um,
And
the
this
COVID
is specifically for the elementary schools.
So
What's
we will-
surprising me is that for secondary schools, the drop does not look so significant. It's been gradual, starting from 2013, 2014, and it has been on a downward trend right up to 2021, 2022. So there seems to be some big anomalies, or some numbers don't seem to match out. So I'm fine with staff taking this back and probably reporting back to us to let us know about the numbers on this graph.
the
But
team
please
can
make
take-
sure you'll let us know.
My apologies. The team can take it back and provide a breakdown for why the graph illustrates as it does.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Provide that in issues and events. The chart is rather complex and the team will want to make sure that they provide you with accurate information.
Sounds good to me. And I had another question, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Stefano Pascucci first, and then Trustee D'Amato Giovanozzi has this question, and then do you have another question, Trustee D'Souza?
Yes, I did. But if you want me to go to the back of the queue, I'm absolutely fine.
No,
with
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I'll wait for Trustee D'Souza, if it's okay, with everybody, because was still his line and you didn't call on me yet when he spoke.
Go ahead, Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Stefano. Another thing that I'd like to understand through this graph is we're calling this circulating collection. Now, my assumption and understanding of the word circulating collection is that these books are available on the shelf and can go into circulation because they are available. Is my understanding right?
Yes, you are correct.
Now, do we know how many students actually utilized the available resources? So what was the numbers of books that actually left the library or were taken from the library and utilized?
Yes,
By
all
year.
all students have the opportunity to check out books. It does vary from grade to grade, but yes, all students do check out books.
I understand that, yeah. Students are allowed to check out books. My question is, do we have numbers and data telling us how many students or how many books were checked out during an academic year? Or how many books were actually taken off the shelf and read and then put back?
Through the chair, we can provide that information on an annual basis for the number of books taken out and the percentage of students that took out books. And we can provide that once we've analyzed the numbers, and we can bring that back.
Perfectly. That'll help because this graph is good in itself. However, it doesn't give us a picture as to why there was such a significant dip in the elementary collection. Because if I understand right, the number of books, of e-books in circulation probably should have gone up during the years 2018 right up to now 2022. However, that's not shown anywhere in this graph. So it would have been helpful if we had a line saying our e-books started probably at, say, 200,000 and then went up to 500,000 or 600,000 at the peak of COVID and then stabilized. But that's not there anywhere. So my assumption is these are all physical books which are appearing in this circulating collection and not e-books.
Yes, it's physical print books.
These are all physical, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if we can get an idea or a picture of the e-books that actually went into circulation for this period, then that would be helpful, and it'll give us an idea why there was a drop in physical book circulation or collection. And it would explain that we had e-books that came into the system, hence this physical collection went down significantly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Trustee Stefano Pascucci, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Trustee Darrell D'Souza's point regarding the circulation numbers, I think actually the graph is backwards. Even if you were to look at the 2021-2022, we're below 800,000 in elementary and let's call it 100,000 for secondary. So that's only 900,000 books, but you're mentioning 1.5 million. But if you look from the beginning of the graph, that's a much closer number to 1.5, even though it's a little bit less, but we'll round up. So maybe that's just the issue there. But that's actually wasn't my question. I was just looking at that again. Regarding slide number 4, all those digital resources that we're I guess subscribed to, do we pay for all these resources?
Chair, yes.
So we're paying for Curio.ca, even though our tax dollars are paying for that station or for that corporation to be around? Isn't that the government paying themselves back?
We are required to pay our licenses for copyright purposes for the artists that are subscription based with these companies.
Okay. All right then. And then thank you very much, Superintendent Murphy. Regarding the Edwin books as well, the Chromebooks for Edwin, we obviously pay for that program as well. But do we have? Are we including those numbers? I guess the Pearson books, the books available to Edwin to our students. Are we including those numbers in our tally of how many online resources we have as well?
Through the chair, in this report, we did not include the subscriptions for Edwin for our intermediate students. What we have reported to here is the devices that are being managed by our library support services in terms of being able to track that board equipment.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last question to you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe not a feasible thing, but more of a question. Do we circulate our collection amongst our schools to sort of refresh it from time to time?
The chair, thank you for that question. We do circulate certain aspects of our collections. There may be specialized collections that we create that will go from school to school. But as a general rule, we try to ensure equity by allowing or making sure that all schools have access to what we are purchasing for board-wide collections. And in addition, schools do have budgets that allow them to buy localized collections for their community.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one more question. I can wait till the end.
Are you done?
I have one more question. I can wait to the end, or if you wish, you can I can ask it now.
Okay, let me check with Trustee D'Ameto Giovanozzi. You had a question?
I do have one question, but I'll let Stefano go ahead and finish
I
his.
thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Just quickly, when the librarians are picking books, are they consulting with their students as well about what they would like to see?
Through the chair, student voice is an important part of the collection. Teacher librarians work with students and teachers to ensure the collections reflect what students want. And when we hear that there is something that students want, we do make a concerted effort at the board level and at the local school level to make sure those books get into our circulation.
Beautiful. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Murphy. Thank you, staff, for the presentation.
Trustee D'Ameto and Giovanozzi, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, my question is, so I understand that there are some schools or some boards that have been destroying hard copies of books in order to replace with ebooks. And I wanted to know if our board is doing anything like that. Are we destroying perfectly good books in order to go digital? That's my question.
The chair, thank you very much for the question. You are speaking to a former teacher librarian. We would not be destroying hard copy books or ebooks. We believe the two of them exist in a happy harmony.
Excellent. Thank you kindly. That's my last question. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee D'Souza.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Del Rosario.
Talking about, thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking about destroying books. In the library that we share with the city, do the city have authority on the books that we keep or destroy?
Through the chair, in our relationships with shared or joint facilities, we have teacher librarians in there that are very diligent in terms of being aware and guiding our students with their book choices. What the rules are for public libraries in terms of shelving materials, censoring materials, or destroying materials, we do not have any say on that. But our staff are diligent in ensuring that our students are exposed to materials that reflect our core values as a board.
Right. Thank you for that. So we actually do not have a say on what is kept and what's not, right? If we share a library with the city.
We are in a shared facility. We do not, and that is why our teacher librarians are part of that staffing in those facilities to ensure our students are exposed to those materials that we approve.
Right, right. Because it's my understanding that there was a situation a few years back that some of the books that we share with the city, is a library that we share with the city. Some of the books and the history books and some of that were removed because it's either digitized or whatever. But it was my understanding there was such a good chunk of them that were removed by the city, which we did not have any control. So what happens when our kids needed to go back in history, they will not have access to that in that library. So where do we send them? I guess my question is, where would the teachers and librarians send them? Send them to another board library or search on their own?
So through the chair, my apologies for not being familiar with that particular situation, but in that case, we have a network of support staff that would look into providing equivalent resources if we were not able to find the same resources. I can't answer as to what their culling process is in the public system, but that is something that we can check on and get back to you regarding.
Okay, I appreciate that. I remember hearing that, and I'll let you know which school. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Trustee D'Souza, do you have another question? Okay.
No, Mr. Chair, thank you. I did ask my second question before Stefano began. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any more questions? Seeing none, we will go now to item G2, student mental health and well-being in Dufferin Peel, Superintendent Papaloni.
And through the chair, this particular report is found on page 17 of your e-agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Papaloni.
Good evening, through the chair. This evening, I would like to introduce Chanel Bernier, our Mental Health and Wellbeing Liaison, and Paula Callender, our Coordinator of Wellbeing and Safe Schools, who will be sharing our Wellbeing Guiding Framework and the many activities and events that the schools and the students have participated in this year to support the overall well-being of our students. Activities by students, for students. I now turn it over to the team.
Through the chair, we thank you for the invitation to speak tonight about the work of the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board Mental Health and Wellbeing Department. Launched in 2022, the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board's Mental Health and Wellbeing Guiding Framework for 2022 to 2025 is an extension of the board's multi-year strategic plan. The guiding framework is built on faith and is inspired by Catholic social teachings and scripture. It centers respect for the dignity of each learner as the basis for mental health and well-being. It identifies mentally healthy learning spaces and caring relationships as key prerequisites for students to excel. It commits to system accountability and trust through understanding, uplifting, and reflecting on student data and voice. The purpose of this guiding framework is to identify the system priorities and objectives to help students, staff, and families thrive. For the 2022 to 2025 school years, the priorities are dignity through equity and inclusion, listening and amplifying, responding through teaching and doing, and reflecting. The guiding framework incorporates recommendations made by the 2022 Ontario Learning Recovery Action Plan and the student voice captured by School Mental Health Ontario in the 2021 Here Now ON report. In 2021, School Mental Health Ontario partnered with Wisdom to Action to relaunch the Here Now ON to gather input from secondary students across Ontario about their priorities for mental health learning and programming in their school communities. Through an online survey and virtual forums, they gathered input from more than 2,400 secondary school students across the province. The report had 5 key recommendations. Students want to learn about mental health at school and prefer that this learning be frequent, early, and varied. Students want leadership opportunities to be more accessible to every student and to create space for different leadership styles. Students want strong equity-based and culturally responsive mental health resources and support. Students want greater access to tools and resources to support their mental health, cope with stress, and navigate peer support safely. Students want their teachers, their parents, caregivers, and families to learn more about mental health. These findings have been echoed this year by the Dufferin Peel Student Mental Health and Wellbeing Champions and Student Senate. Some of the highlights of the work that we've been doing to align the work of well-being with the guiding framework include these initiatives: the Student Mental Health and Wellbeing Champions, the Thrive and Thrive in Community newsletters, Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week, Bell Let's Talk Day, the Elementary Wellness Grant, PD sessions for staff, and various wellness activities during Catholic Education Week, which this year coincides with Mental Health Awareness Week.
As part of a post-pandemic response and through special education and program learning services, the Dufferin Peel Student Mental Health and Wellbeing Champions program continued this year. Champions are student representatives from all Dufferin Peel secondary schools who were selected for a variety of qualities, including leadership skills, lived experience, diversity, and commitment to social justice. They received training in mental health and equity issues and have been hard at work creating resources for their peers. These resources include strategies for help seeking, stress and exam preparation, and social justice awareness, and are released to coincide with significant days, such as Truth and Reconciliation Day, or at certain times of the year, such as just before exams or the holidays, when students are away from their in-school supports. The resources are reviewed by the equity, religion, academic, and clinical staff. They are released via social media, through internal distribution channels, and they are promoted in every secondary school. Each resource introduces and explains the topic, reduces stigma, and provides students with the tools they need to advocate for their mental wellness and the mental health of their peers. To date, over 25 resources have been shared, and supports have been well received by students across the board. Each month, the Wellbeing Department releases a newsletter for staff and a version for families and caregivers. The Thrive newsletter for staff includes the guiding framework, activities that are based on a theme and the virtues, ideas for classroom prayers and activities, and resources from School Mental Health Ontario. Schools promoting mental wellness in different ways are also highlighted. The Thrive in Community newsletter has a focus on parents and caregivers and includes strategies and supports that can be used at home. Both newsletters feature student voice videos from our Dufferin Peel schools. The Wellbeing Department, in collaboration with support services and equity and safe schools, prepared activities and resources for Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week in November. These faith-based lessons and discussion prompts were sent out to every elementary and secondary school. Elementary and secondary schools have been promoting mental health and wellness throughout the school year. 2 schools, 1 elementary and 1 secondary, were chosen to be highlighted on CTV Toronto News in the lead up to Bell Let's Talk Day on January 25th. The Wellbeing Department also shared the Bell Let's Talk toolkit with the Dufferin Peel system. The schools in the news were St. Michael's Secondary and St. Albert of Jerusalem Elementary. We will now show a clip from the Bell News, the Bell Let's Talk, that was featuring St. Michael's.
Lethon reports on a program designed to help students succeed amid the stress.
Improving mental health can be as simple as coloring, or blowing bubbles, or even just a conversation.
I'm going to try again with the microphone.
As high school students get ready for exams this week, there's an effort to ease the mental strain associated with test taking.
CTV Sean Leathong reports on a program designed to help students succeed amid the stress. Improving mental health can be as simple as coloring, or blowing bubbles, or even just a conversation.
Anything that'll help alleviate any kind of stress and let everyone know that as students, we're here to support other students.
For Bell Let's Talk, students at St. Michael Catholic Secondary School in Bolton are focusing on wellness through small mental breaks at a very stressful time, exam time.
Right now, I would say it's a lot just coming out of COVID. Since I'm a grade 12 student, the last time I did exams were actually in grade 9.
Many of the students here have never written formal exams, and support staff are seeing the pressure.
We have a lot of students come down to support services, really anxious. We see a lot of different states, tears, hyperventilation, things like that.
These students, called mental health champions, have been working to create safe spaces, part of an overall mental wellness strategy at St. Michael.
Yeah, they value academic success, but they need to value their mental health. And we as professionals need to support that.
While the mental health champions are offering help along with motivation, here the mental health support is more than just 1 week. It is a constant circle from staff to students, each checking in.
And just learning to be yourself and love who you are.
Students like Olivia Giancos, who was anxious about returning to school post-pandemic. Now she's offering support to those who face the same feelings.
It's amazing to be able to take my experiences and help other kids, be able to see them grow and use what I have learned and give it to somebody else that needs it.
Small things like learning to take time and breathe, or just being there to listen when someone needs an ear.
It feels better. It makes you feel like someone actually listening to you. So a lot of times we tend to keep things to ourselves.
And while the stress and activities come and go, the conversation keeps going. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
So of course, the elementary students wanted to do similar work to the secondary peers. The elementary schools across Dufferin Peel had the opportunity to apply for grants for up to $500 so they could promote wellness in their school communities. Successful applicants are engaged right now in projects such as Wellness Week, Chill Fair, Chill Zones, and kindness campaigns. We have asked the schools the question, how are student leaders promoting wellness in your schools? They've been sending in some information, many through the Thrive newsletter, and these are a few of the artifacts that were collected for their activities.
Through a series of presentations designed for staff PD, the Wellbeing Department has also shared School Mental Health Ontario resources, information on a mentally healthy back to school, transitions, and how to notice and support students that require additional care. In-school PD on wellness and resilience have been provided when requested.
And this concludes our presentation for this evening. We will take any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for clarification?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay, Trustee D'Amato, Evanozzi, you're first. Go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, I just want to say that we will all experience mental unwellness in our lifetimes. So I'm happy to see that you're actively working on providing resources and support for the students. I wanted to ask if, so there's tools that if you're having anxiety or panic attacks, there's certain tools that help, like tapping, there's the deep breathing, there's tools like that. I was wondering if we could create maybe little pocket cards to distribute to the students with these quick and easy remedies.
Right, actually, that's a wonderful comment. And in fact, we have distributed cards to students for exactly that. So secondary schools would have received bookmarks around anxiety reducing strategies, and tapping would be one of them, deep breathing, etc. And that has been distributed to students in the secondary panel.
Excellent. And so my other question would be, I have a constituent who is a yoga teacher, and I was speaking to him actually last week, and he told me that he used to go into schools and help with teaching breathing techniques and meditation techniques. And he said he would be more than willing to get back into the schools and help out. Are you guys accepting any kind of outside support where you could have perhaps some yoga teachers like my constituent come in and help teach, because he teaches breathing techniques like alternate nostril breathing, that kind of stuff. But he has a lot of resources and tools that would be helpful to educate the young students with.
Yes, Trustee DiMatteo, they would have to go through the speakers protocol, and we do have many presenters that have been put on that list in our schools. So we would be happy, if you want to connect him with our department, happy to have him walk through the process, and we could arrange for that. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
As for the cards that we've handed to the students, we can provide the trustees with a copy of that as well.
I would love that. Thank you kindly. That's it for me. Thank you.
Trustee Corbett, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Thank you for the excellent presentation this evening. Just regarding the anti-bullying awareness, I just want to mention, so this year, Pink Shirt Day, which was not part of the Anti-Bullying Awareness Week in November, but Pink Shirt Day actually fell on the same day as Ash Wednesday. And I had a secondary school tell our students that even though we recognize Pink Shirt Day, because it was Ash Wednesday, and we are a Catholic school, that they were not allowed to wear their pink shirts and instead of their uniform shirt. And that was very concerning to hear. And then I heard stories of teachers telling those students maybe bring a pink shirt just in case. So it didn't seem that that messaging was clear to the students or to the schools. And I had some elementary schools certainly promoting Pink Shirt Day, but not all. And I don't know if any of the secondary schools in my area did. So we know bullying is a huge issue. It's a very serious issue. And I would have hoped that we could celebrate this campaign, which really is of kindness. It's one of our Catholic virtues, along with Ash Wednesday. I didn't think they conflicted at all. But through the chair, if I can just ask, can our board in the future maybe provide some clearer direction to the schools, the administrators in advance, just going forward, because this is an important, it's just one anti-bullying initiative, but it's an important one. And unfortunately, when our board did post something that day, it was too late for the schools or the parents to have had the message. And unfortunately, schools had already started, and so the timing wasn't ideal. But through the chair, is that possible that we can maybe do a little bit more proactive messaging prior to that in the future?
Through the chair, yes, we will be more proactive in ensuring that there's clarity and it doesn't have that kind of confusion in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Mr. Chair, I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, just to reiterate, following Trustee Corbett's comment, I think Ash Wednesday is very, very important. So perhaps if we could do the Pink Shirt Day on a different day, I think that strong Catholics would really appreciate that, because I noticed it too. And I was hoping that the two could be divided. We can celebrate one and then the other on a separate day. That's my input on that. Thank you.
Through the chair, we'll take that back.
Okay, Any more questions? Seeing none, we will,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, go ahead.
it is an operational decision in terms of, when to celebrate that, but just to remind, the Pink Shirt Day is an actual day. It's celebrated across the across the country on that particular day. It just happened to fall on Ash Wednesday this year. I don't believe it has happened before where those two had occurred on the same day, but I don't see an issue with both being recognized, as it is a Catholic virtue, through the chair.
Trustee D'Amato, Giovanozzi, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, Ash Wednesday has been celebrated for much longer than Anti-Bullying Day. And although I believe Anti-Bullying Day is a day to be celebrated or acknowledged, I believe that two separate days are in order here. Thank you. That's just my input. Thank you.
Madam Director,
Through the chair, I ask that the trustees allow staff to take that back and put a fulsome response forward through issues and events.
okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, there being none, we will move on to item G3, student trustee election for 2023-2024. Superintendent Lewis.
Through the chair, this report can be found on page 27 of your e-agenda.
Good evening. And through the chair, you have before you the student trustee election report for the 2023-2024 school year. On Wednesday, February 22nd, the election of the student trustees was held at the CEC. As trustees are aware, the election is divided by North and South regions of the board. We have 13 schools in the north and 13 schools in the south. Prior to the election, we received 11 candidate applications for 13 northern schools and 11 candidate applications for the 13 southern schools. On the day of the election, we had 22 student candidates present, 11 from the north and 11 from the south. Each student gave a 3-minute speech. The candidates were asked to weave into their speeches the importance of Catholic education and why they would be an advocate and voice for Catholic education if they were elected as a student trustee. As you know, it is no longer a requirement for student trustees to be Catholic, but they are still a voice representing Catholic education, and their speeches we heard reflected their commitment. Supporting the student election this year was Elizabeth Rego, academic consultant, student senate liaison, and Susan Simeone, vice principal of St. Roch. Dea and Leroy took on leadership roles for this event. They welcomed the voting members and the candidates. Leroy and Dea presented a PowerPoint that they reviewed, and they reviewed the election process and answered any questions. I would like to acknowledge Student Senate and our current student trustees. Led by Dea and Leroy, they ran a very informative campaign to help secondary students in the system understand the role of student trustee. Leroy and Dea even prepared and hosted a virtual event on February 6th that was an information session for students wanting to learn more about the role and the position of student trustee. They were very diligent in ensuring that our next student trustees had a fulsome understanding of the role and expectations. As you may have noted, 2 schools in both the North and South did not have candidates that represented the schools. These schools did send voting members to the event. Unfortunately, they did not have interested candidates this year. As mentioned, student trustees did an excellent job this year in their information campaign and marketing the student trustee position system-wide. We would like to congratulate Nathan Nguyen from Notre Dame Secondary School. He was elected and accepted the position, and Kristen Belize from St. Joan of Arc Secondary School. She also accepted the position. That concludes the student trustee election report. Are there any questions?
Any questions for clarification?
Mr. Chairman, Stefano.
Thomas? Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Did you say my name?
Trustee Thomas. Oh,
Hello? I didn't ask any questions so far. Hello,
okay.
Mr. Chairman, Chair?
You have the floor, Trustee Thomas.
No, I don't have any question. I didn't ask anything so far. Go ahead. Thank you very much for the opportunity to say something, but no, I don't have anything right now. Only I have a concern why that two schools is not participated.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's actually on the similar lines as Trustee Thomas. You mentioned that they sent voting members, but they did not send delegates. How are these delegates? Why weren't they sending delegates? Is it just because no one wanted to step up, or there wasn't an elected official or an individual? What was? I guess, do all the schools have the same process of getting a delegate to the student senate?
Thanks for the question. Trustee Pascucci, you are correct that they did not have interested candidates this year. And when we look at the historical data, just over the last 5 years, it has generally happened that one or two schools don't have candidates that come forward on a given year, but it's never been the same schools. And your second question, do they have the same process? Yes, they all run the same process within the schools.
And what would be that process where you wouldn't have candidates? Are these individuals directly elected by the student population, or are they elected within the student council?
They are elected within the entire school body. And so there will be a campaign advertising the position. There'll be information sent out. As I mentioned, the student trustee and the student senate this year sent a lot of the advertising out through their own social media as well. So it was well advertised. And then those interested candidates within a school go to the school principal, declare their interest. And then if there's more than one candidate, which is often the case in schools, then there's election, and that election is with the entire student body.
And our schools or principals, rather, are they, when there are multiple, and again, everybody's allowed to run for whatever position they want, but are they promoting this position? If there's nobody who is interested in going for that position, but yet we have, say for example, 3 or 4 candidates for treasurer. Obviously, everybody can run for whatever position they wish for, but are the schools promoting these as a way to voice their peers, I guess, wants and needs and concerns?
Yes, no, absolutely. The schools are promoting this, and they're provided with a lot of information that comes from the student trustees that have been written by the student trustees over time and refined so that they have a really good understanding of what the role is. The student trustee election is run at a different time than the regular school elections for prime minister or treasurer, that type of thing. This is a separate election because we do have them so early in the year.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Superintendent Lewis.
Okay. Is that a legacy hand, Trustee Thomas?
No. What happened? I don't have any other question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you have another question, Trustee Stefano?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Because your hand just went up.
It's down now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, there being no more further questions, we will advance to the next item, G4, Revised Policy 5.25, Student Trustees, Superintendent Victorino.
And through the chair, this report begins on page 29 of your e-agenda.
Good evening, and continuing through the chair. The Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board supports student engagement on the Board of Trustees, currently through 2 student trustee positions. Trustees recently directed staff to help explore a path forward with regards to the potential addition of an Indigenous student trustee position. The report before you summarizes the rationale and proposed related changes to the existing policy 5.25, student trustees. Consistent with the Education Act, while Dufferin Peel currently supports 2 student trustee positions, there is room for a 3rd position to be created, and as noted, staff have been directed to explore this addition. In addition to this exploration for the 3rd position, such a creation would align with the Catholic social teaching of subsidiarity, which is an ongoing and constant commitment of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. The reasons to support the moving forward in this direction is, first of all, that Indigenous people are distinct from populations who are from time to time referred to as racialized, in that they come from and are parts of sovereign, self-determining nations separate from Canada and are indeed treaty rights holders. This fact is enshrined already in our Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board Policy 34, Indigenous Education, which is provided as Appendix A following the first 2 pages of the report. The shift to the inclusion of an Indigenous student trustee would be based on a number of reasons. 3 are foremost among them. First, more explicit representation of Indigenous students serves to honor their lived experiences and effectively, and to do so effectively, not by relying on existing structures, but on structures that are intended to specifically center student voice by Indigenous student voice. Further, in the spirit of reconciliation, the addition of an Indigenous student trustee reflects, as I mentioned earlier, the Catholic social teaching of subsidiarity, which focuses on the fact that decisions are made locally by the people most impacted by them, rather than a higher, if you will, more centralized level of power. And finally, this would lead to greater inclusion of Indigenous people in Dufferin Peel's decision-making, which is also aligned not only to the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishop works, but also to, but specifically, I'm sorry, in its pastoral letters on reconciliation with Indigenous people and the work of the Ontario Human Rights Commission Strategic Plan from 2023 to 2025. As noted at a previous meeting, several Ontario school districts already have an Indigenous student trustee, in addition to our coterminous board. As a potential way forward, staff have provided highlights of what would be changes to our existing policy, and these are included in the report as well as appendices B and C. These revisions, and we would want to review these at length, so they're not by any means final, but they're, as I said, presented as a way forward, outline a process for selecting an Indigenous student trustee, which would be done in consultation with our Indigenous Education Council, but which, following that consultation and recommendation process, would be promoted among all students. It would follow an electoral process, and it would align with the regulation already in place in the Education Act for the election of student trustees. The Indigenous Education Council would be involved in bringing names forward and in confirming their eligibility, and then the 2 processes would be brought together and aligned. As noted, we were directed to provide this information to you, and as always, I would be pleased to take any questions on the report or any of the appended materials.
We'll go now to questions for clarification.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Stefano Pascucci, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I do have a question, but for some reason, I believe my hand is not lowering after I do press lower the hand, but hopefully it worked this time. But I do have a question. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Madam Director and I guess Superintendent Veccarino. So just to make sure I understand this, the students, because previous I guess discussions about how this this Indigenous student trustee would be I guess find a place at the table was that they were going to be appointed by the Indigenous Education Council. Just to confirm that we are aligning with the Education Act, where the student trustees do have to be elected by the student population or a subset. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. While there will be a role for the Indigenous Education Council, i.e. confirming all of those students who are interested in running for that position through the Indigenous Education Council. Once that confirmation of those candidates is complete, then it would fall into the election process as articulated in the Education Act.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, what would happen, what is going to happen, or what will happen if we don't have any candidates who bring their names forward?
Through the chair, if there's no candidates that put their names forward in any year, then that position would remain vacant for that year.
Okay, so it wouldn't be an automatic carryover?
Through the chair, no.
Thank you. And then would it be possible for trustees to, and not to hinder the process of the Indigenous Education Council, would it be possible for trustees to see what the criteria would be in order to, if students put their name forward, that the Indigenous Education Council would use to look at this? Or is it just basically they'll just to confirm if they are identifying as an Indigenous student within our population?
Through the chair, if it is the will of the trustees to consider amending the policy to include a third student trustee to represent Indigenous student voice, then accompanying that policy would be a general administrative procedure as well for trustees' consideration that would articulate that process, including how an Indigenous student is deemed to have been confirmed through the Indigenous Education Council.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Director, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you, just to confirm, my hand is down now, so hopefully it shows up on your side as well.
Okay, it's still up. Okay, I have
Down in our screen.
I have the following trustees in this order: Trustee Xavier, Trustee Thomas, and Trustee Mario Pascucci with questions. So, Trustee Xavier, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More so ever than a question, it'd be just a comment, repeating what I had mentioned earlier in the last meeting when I asked to bring forward this report. With the fact of looking into reconciliation and knowing that the Indigenous people are distinct from racialized population, just reading this right off the report that you made us, and knowing that we are trying to create that reconciliation, I would be in support. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring forward a motion, but after all questions are.
Okay. Next speaker would be Trustee Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any question. The question already, my concern is already answered. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Trustee Mario Pascucci.
Likewise, Mr. Chairman, I've heard what was said. I'm comfortable enough right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Trustee D'Amato Giovanozzi.
I wanted to ask through the chair, how would they be held to account? Would they be held to any sort of account? Like, they're not elected officials or anything. They're just kind of, are they held to any sort of account? Is there any?
Through the chair, they would hold the same responsibilities as other elected student trustees hold, so the same rights and responsibilities. But the additional layer is there would be a direct connection to the Indigenous Education Council that would help inform the work they do as well in seeking input from to represent Indigenous student voice throughout the system.
Okay, and also I do know that their culture is their religion, and that their religion is spiritual and it doesn't recognize God. And I know when they did a presentation last time, they didn't stand during the national anthem. So I'm just wondering if these kind of things have been taken into consideration. I would be in support of an Indigenous student liaison to bring issues to the student trustees. I am in support of that.
So through the chair, as with many groups of people, people who identify as Indigenous, whether First Nations, Métis, Inuit, they're not, and I don't want to use the word they, people who identify as part of these groups are not a monolith, and some recognize the Catholic Christian God as the Catholic Christian God. Other acknowledge other spiritual beings and spiritual forms. I don't feel qualified to describe more fully than that. But it is in the first paragraph of the report noted that Indigenous people are distinct and sovereign from Canada. And in that regard, there may be some people who identify as Indigenous who may not already in our schools stand for the playing of the anthem. And that might be the case even among students who identify more formally as being Canadian. However, there are also many people who identify as members of those groups who do stand for the playing of the anthem and who do identify as being Catholic Christians.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, I just wanted to finish off by saying I support a voting process for this type of stuff. And I think this disrespects the traditional voting process. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for clarification?
Mr. Chair, sorry, I just want to clarify. I believe, following up Trustee Paula's question, isn't the Indigenous student trustee going to follow the same election process?
Through the chair, that is what would be identified in the gap, yes. Because the election process for a student trustee is articulated in the Education Act under a regulation.
Right.
So you have a requirement. You have a requirement to ensure that your election process for a student trustee is aligned with the Education Act. Otherwise, you won't be compliant with it.
Right. So we do have to follow our election process for student trustee when we do elect the Indigenous student trustee. The only difference, I think, based on the presentation, is that the Indigenous Council will confirm or validate that the candidates are legitimate or eligible Indigenous student. Is that what I understand correctly?
Through the chair, that is correct. The Indigenous Education Council will confirm eligibility of those students that are interested in running for that position. Once that confirmation has taken place and a candidate list has been generated, then the student trustee election process that we follow for the other two student trustees, and as articulated in the Education Act, will be implemented.
Okay, thank you for that. The only difference too, I guess, is the only students that can vote for them are also member of the Indigenous group?
Through the chair, no. As per the Education Act, all students in the board have the opportunity to vote. There's two ways in which you can run your student trustee election. You can either have all students in the board cast a ballot for whatever candidate that they want to support, or you use the process that we've been using, which is also aligned with the Education Act, where you have representation from schools that will come forward and vote.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, so not just the Indigenous students can vote. Okay.
Through the chair, that's correct, because while the student trustee position potentially is being established to elevate Indigenous student voice, they're also there to represent all students as well.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Okay, Trustee Mario Pascucci.
I'm fine, Mr. Chairman. You already notified that I was, you called me on, I said no, and everything's been answered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you talking about Stefan Pascucci maybe? Because he has his hand up.
Trustee D'Souza.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Well, I
Chairman,
think,
sorry,
yes,
point of
no.
order. Sorry, Trustee D'Souza. I don't know if the live stream or the board office is seeing, or the board chambers are seeing the same thing we are. Trustee Diasacoli, Trustee Daryl D'Souza, and then myself. We have a process of whoever puts their hands up. I know this is a little bit difficult, but maybe if we could text when we have a question, or put it in the meeting chat so that we don't overstep each other.
I would suggest that when you have, instead of using the digital one, can you just raise your hand and I'll recognize it?
That's fair. Thank you.
I won't be calling on people who accidentally have their, or whatever, their hand raised. So who is next then?
I think
I'm going last regardless. So after everybody else, after Trustee D'Souza or Trustee Diasacoli.
If I may suggest, when I was speaking, I know Dea's hand went up. And then as I was ending this question, Daryl's hand went up based on what I saw.
Okay, so Trustee D'Souza, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question was, if I understood right, the process for this Indigenous student trustee would be that the individual would be selected, or the group of individuals would be selected by the Indigenous Council, or will be open up for nominations to be received across our secondary schools to all the Indigenous individuals who identify themselves as Indigenous students.
Through the chair, the process would be that there would be communication to the entire system, all the secondary schools, identifying that there's an opportunity to run as a candidate for this position. So that communication goes out to all the schools. Individuals would identify themselves as interested in the position. The confirmation of those individuals' eligibility, i.e. that they are indeed students of an Indigenous background will be through the Indigenous Education Council. So the call goes out to all students, those students that want to run, that goes through the Indigenous Education Council to confirm that indeed they are eligible to run. That list of candidates then gets generated, and then the process for election of a student trustee kicks in as we typically use it for the other two student trustees.
Thank you, Madam Director. So my second question is, and will this Indigenous student trustee elections happen along with other two student trustee elections?
Through the chair, it will, although there'll be some nuancing to it. Like it'll happen around the same time, but it may have a bit of a different process associated with it. Because in this case, currently we have two student trustees and a process that identifies one that represents the Northern District of the board and one that represents the Southern District of the board. The third student trustee position would represent Indigenous student voice for the entire board, and therefore will have a bit of a different process associated with it. But it's still going to be an election process aligned with how it's articulated in the Education Act.
Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next speaker is student trustee Dea.
Sorry, question was responded to a question about the timing of the Indigenous student trustee. So I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Question, okay. Trustee Stefanos Pascucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to I guess Superintendent Vaccarino. How are the other school boards handling the other school boards that have Indigenous student trustee? How are they handling the this position to have somebody on the board?
So through the chair, the research that we were able to do in that regard would suggest that there is an uneven field in that regard. In some cases, it's a straight appointment. In some cases, it's the process that Director Mazzarato just outlined. And in some cases, it's an election that involves all students who identify as being Indigenous. That being said, we know that that process is in and of itself somewhat flawed, because not everybody who is Indigenous necessarily identifies. So there is an uneven ground. The process that we would hope to enshrine in the gap that we have yet to write, but wanted direction from you this evening, first of all, would be brought back to you for confirmation, but we would want to ensure that it is aligned to the precepts in the Education Act.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Vaccarino. Appreciate it.
Okay. Trustee Xavier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing if there's no more other questions, I'd just like to make a comment and then bring forward a motion. My first comment is primarily a lot of questions that have come forward tonight is in regards to the selection and election process of a student trustee, which falls under our GAP, our General Administrative Procedures. That being said, when I bring forward this motion, we're still going to be going over the gap on the proper process of how a student trustee from the Indigenous community will be elected. Is that correct, you, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Perfect, thank you. Now, that being said, noticing the fact that we are Dufferin Peel, we are one of the leading boards within Ontario, and seeing that we do need representation from the Indigenous community. And if just pulling this right off the report that has come forward, it constantly comes with a consistent pledge made by the Canadian Conference of the Catholic Bishops in their 2022 pastoral letters in reference to reconciliation with the Indigenous people. I feel that it is beneficial for us as a board to have an individual that can bring forward concerns and issues that people from the Indigenous community are facing on a daily basis, that just even at the last meeting, our own student trustees had mentioned that they wouldn't be able to profess out loud because they won't know as much as an individual from the Indigenous community. My recommendation would be to bring forward an something to amend our policy in reference to student trustees. So through you, Mr. Chairman, the motion I'd like to bring forward is sorry, one second, I'm just gonna move this. Okay, my motion would be that the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees that policy 5.25, student trustees, be amended to include a third student trustee to represent the Indigenous student voice, and that the election process aligns with the requirements for student trustee elections as per the Educational Act. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to also add, could I ask for a recorded vote? And if I may add, just because we are not able to see all the trustees on the screen, if Madam Director, if you have Zoom or somebody has Zoom in front of them and can see what the vote's going to be like, we would appreciate that, just because not all trustees are seen on this screen, I believe.
Through the chair, as long as the cameras are on when you call for the recorded vote, Mr. Chairperson, you would ask for all those in favor to stand.
Okay.
And then ask them to be seated. And once they've been seated, ask for all those not in favor to stand, or those opposed to stand.
So everyone should turn their cameras on then.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I don't think all trustees are on that screen. I believe only our communications advisor, Amrita, will be able to see everybody. Yeah. Everyone?
Can you not see us on the screen, on your screen?
Through the chair, we can see you on the screen.
We're good now. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
You see how good we are?
Could you repeat the motion again?
Sure. The motion that we're bringing forward tonight is that the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees that policy 5.25, student trustees, be amended to include a third student trustee to represent Indigenous student voice, and that the election process aligns with the requirements for student trustee elections as per the Education Act.
Do we have a seconder for the motion?
Through the chair, you don't require a seconder in committee.
Okay. So we put that to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, just to confirm, how are we recording these votes? Are we standing? How will you know if I'm standing?
Can we just raise our hand?
Another way to do the recorded vote is
Your
just
body
to ask,
moving.
to name each trustee and ask them whether they're voting.
We just put our
Say
hand.
your name.
That would be much easier, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes or no?
Through the chair, just
That's-
raise your hand. Yeah, your real hand.
Not fake, eh? Not fake.
Real hand.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Those in favor?
Are we standing or calling, Madam Chair?
Raise your hand, the real
These are
hand.
going up.
Okay, 1,
Real hand.
3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed?
The chair, is the chair going to vote?
Oh, I thought the chair didn't vote.
No, the chair can vote.
Yes, you
as a
can.
recorded vote. Through the chair.
Okay. I will vote in favor.
So, Mr. Chair, if you could just call it again, just for, I guess, for purposes of whoever's for a recording
Sure, our
secretary.
recording secretary got them all, so no.
Okay, and those opposed? 1. Sorry. Oh, so it's vote is for the ayes, so it's carried.
What's the vote call, please, Mr. Chairman? What's the number, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Trustee Mario Piscucci has a comment or a question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Trustee Pascucci.
Yes, what is the count, please?
6-1, no, 9-1.
Is everyone, and Mr. Chairman, is everyone here tonight?
No, Bruno is not here.
Okay. Because we have 11.
There
That's
should be
why.
just 10.
Because we had 11, that's why. Okay, good. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Thanks, Luz.
All right. Nico, okay. We go on now to the next item, and that's item G5. Dufferin Peel letter to Minister Lecce regarding chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. And I believe we just received a response from the ministry. And
Through the chair, that's correct. The reason why the letter is included in this evening's agenda is because the chair of the board, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, in response to the delegations regarding concussions and football, has been received by the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Education has articulated the kinds of resources and regulations that have been put in place to mitigate that. Staff are looking for direction in terms of what the next steps are as a result of receiving the letter.
all right, the floor is open for comments, suggestions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, and through you. Can we send some follow-up letter, maybe on behalf of the Board of Trustees from our chair of the board to the delegates, just informing them of the response we got from the ministry? I feel like it would be prudent to at least let them know the communication that we received.
Through the chair, yes, staff can take that as direction. No motion is required. So we'll work to support the chair of the board to prepare a response letter that would include the information from the Ministry of Education.
Thank you, Madam Director.
Any other comments or suggestions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Trustee
The
Pascucci.
staff, when do we get a good general understanding of the population of the students that are going into football and stuff of that nature? Do we ever get a report, or is that an internal document that just serves staff? In other words, if I want to
Staff
know,
can provide, with apologies, Trustee Pascucci.
no, I stepped over you. Sorry. If I may, thank you. No, what I'm saying is that, if we can get a bit of a handle and see how big this is, because it's the Friday night things that used to happen at Marcellinus, et cetera, showed a lot of spirit and what have you. But I'm just curiosity, just get some numbers, and they don't have to be accurate. They have to be a good general guess. If that's available in the near future, it'd be appreciated. If not, we can wait when it is available. I don't want to do a make job, another creative job, another job for you guys to do. Does that make sense, Madam Chair? Madam Director?
Through the chair, yes, staff can provide some numbers in terms of over the last few years. We'd probably want to include pre-COVID. COVID would have been obviously an anomaly year, and what the number of students that are wishing to participate in football currently. We can put that kind of data together and provide it in issues and events, although I can't commit to doing it for this week's issues and events.
No, I don't expect, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I don't expect something immediately, just a good general comment. I mean, including baseball, football, soccer, or whatever the sports are that have a larger number of students, and that'd be called that the staff would have to make what is meant by a large call. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I just want to get an opportunity to see, okay, fine, the amount of extracurricular work that might help us in terms of developing what we need in terms of equipment, equipment protection of the equipment itself, to make sure it serves what it's supposed to do, and also get an idea to meet the needs of the students, who in some cases use these opportunities for scholarships and what have you. So anyways, but thank you very much. And like I said, it doesn't have to be next week, Mary Ann. Next couple of weeks will be fine. Next month after that, it's fine too. Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll go forward with the suggestion then. Forward then to item,
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Bria Corbett has her hand up.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Corbett.
Thank you. That's okay. Through the chair, just to follow up to what Trustee Mario Pascucci had just asked for. He mentioned scholarships, but I don't know if he specifically asked for information on that. But I would be interested in if it's feasible to get an idea of how many of our students from Duffer and Peel have gone on post-secondary to scholarships for football, rugby in particular. Could probably include hockey, although I think that's, I don't think we have as many teams. Just to see how many are using the extracurricular sports, those specific sports, as a platform to leverage their post-secondary careers. We know in some cases it's very important for those students in terms of scholarships. I just would love to have an idea of the scope of those students that are accessing those scholarship opportunities, if that's feasible.
The chair, to the extent possible, we will, but it may be difficult to get that kind of elemental data.
Of course. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I just make a comment?
Go ahead, President.
I think I can take a picture of the wall from Marcelina's, where they have the picture of all the players that went to scholarship and all that. It's a perfect example of most of them went on scholarship because of the sports that they were in. And just last year, we had one young lady that got a scholarship on hockey in the US. I just can't remember the school, but it's a prominent school as well. So I'll take a picture for you of that wall, just to give you an idea. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I see these hands up and it's confusing me. Okay. Any more questions? Because Trustee Stefano, you had your hand up?
No, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what's wrong with it, but my hand's down right now, so I have no questions, but thank you for calling on me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think, still my hand is up. I cannot see in my side, my hand is up or not.
We don't see it either.
Yeah?
We don't see the hands up either on our side.
No.
For us looking.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a shadow in.
Some, I think you can see when he's watching from the board.
Reminds me of the song Hands Up.
Yeah.
I think that's
I'm going to start breaking into song.
Okay, moving on then to the next item, item H, Trustee Committee Administration Report requiring action. Do we have any, Madam?
The chair, there's no items for H.
No items for
We're
H.
or I
I,
or J. We're on
J.
K. And through the chair, I might suggest, because of the technical difficulties we're having with the virtual hand, that for section K, questions asked of and by board members, that trustees who wish to ask questions, if you put your hand up, then the chair will take note of who wants to ask questions and then call on you in that order. So if you just put your hand up if you have a question that you want to ask, and we'll make a list.
Okay, Trustee Corbett. Go ahead. I don't see Any other hand? No? Go ahead, Trustee Corbett.
Okay, thank you, through the chair. So I have two questions. The first question is just regarding our monthly board newsletters that that are prepared from the communications department that we share specifically with the MPPs, the churches, and OXTA. And I realized that that particular newsletter was developed as a face-related initiative for those parties rather than community-based newsletter. But through the chair, I'm wondering, can we have those board newsletters also shared on our board website and with our parent communities beyond their current reach? I think any opportunity to promote Catholic education is important, and one of our core values in our multi-year strategic plan is trust, and we certainly aim to improve transparency and collaboration and clear communication with our communities and the schools, the families. So through the chair, is that feasible that we can, going forward, extend the reach of those monthly newsletters beyond just the MPP, the churches, and OXTA?
The chair, yes, we can take that back and implement it.
Excellent, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I do have a second question, if that's okay.
You go ahead.
Thank you. My second question is just regarding homework that's been assigned over March break and students coming back yesterday. Some had tests, some had major assignments that were due on the first day back. And I had a parent reach out concerned because although we have a policy, a board policy that talks around homework and the implications for families and the relationship between home and school, this parent was concerned because the secondary teacher had assigned some significant tasks to be worked on over the break and was due on the first day back. And some students had tests scheduled yesterday. Some had more than one test scheduled yesterday. And the concern was that while many have gone away on vacation over March break, or some just needed a break from school, it has exponentially added to the mental health and stress for students when they are not able to take that break, or they're not supported in taking time off from school, and they feel like obligated or overwhelmed in having to continue to work throughout the break just to catch up. I had a parent say that when a student spoke to the teacher about ahead of time before March break, the teacher responded, "You have 2 weeks to work on it." But in fact, 9 days of those were going to be March break. And when another student asked for an extension, it was denied. While my SO has worked through this situation, and I'm grateful for her help, through the chair, my question is, can we incorporate maybe some clearer language regarding the assignment of homework and tests immediately following a school holiday, at least so staff are consistent and mindful of what our students are going through? And at the very least, the 2 weeks at Christmas and the 1 week at March break. In some cases, I know for my own children, teachers actually assigned those tests or assignments before the March break, so that they didn't have to worry about that when they got back. So I think in the end, we would have a much more positive impact and certainly a better impact on well-being and academic performance if we could put in place some measures for some consistency across the board.
Through the chair, we can take a look at the gap associated with homework and identify whether or not there needs to be more explicit, clearer language to address the concern that you've raised here this evening. And then we'll bring that gap forward to the May Bylaw and Policy Committee meeting.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Xavier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my fellow trustees who are actually listening in or going through Zoom, we are having a few technical difficulties in the sense of the hand being up. That's the reason why there's a bug or something with the system. But that being said, this being one of the first meetings where we're kind of doing this whole process of a hybrid nature, I know that our communication staff is looking into this tomorrow, but moving forward, would it be better if the chair of the meeting has Zoom also open but muted on their laptop, just so that we have that chat feature? You, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair, this is the first time we've had this many zooming in virtually to a meeting, right? So it's a bit of a learning curve, similar to what we went through in September and October. And we'll take away, because we have ICT staff as well that have tuned in, and our corporate communication staff. So we'll take away what we've learned this evening and see if we can get the best practices together. So, the hand raising may not actually be the best way to go. Just quickly thinking about it, maybe if the camera's on, you have a question. If the camera's off, you don't have a question. So we'll take away some feedback from trustees and we'll see what we can do. And we'll, as we always try to do, make the experience better next time we go down this path.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only reason I said we'll open Zoom was just to have that chat feature, because being chair would be so much easier if I could just pop a message and
Absolutely. Through the chair, that's absolutely an option. We've equipped both the chair and the vice chair with two dual monitors now. So one can, one's there for presentation purposes. The other one, if you have your laptop, you could plug in and act as a triple monitor by that point. So absolutely, we will take it away and make it better.
Perfect. No worries. It's always a work in progress. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any, I haven't noticed any hands up. So are there any more questions from the trustees? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to the next items.
The chair, it would be a motion to move in camera.
Do we need a motion for that?
Through the chair, yes.
So I move.
I move. Okay.
By
Thomas. All right.
by Chairman, by Trustee Anisha Thomas. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Through the chair, we need about 10 minutes to close the door.
Okay. We'll take a break of 10 minutes.
Do we have to move out of our thing? No.
You can join if you are tuning in remotely, you can join the in-camera room.
Where is our notice?
Yeah, it had popped up and it disappeared.
Yeah, very quick. It was like I was just about to ask.
Okay. Do I just assign everybody?
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah.
At least all the trustees. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's anyone else other than us.
The one that's not eligible. Yeah.
Thomas, are you in next week or are you traveling?
It's still in India.
Oh, Thomas is in India already?
Yeah,
Oh, not bad.
I know. Are you back next week?
I'm back next week, yeah.
This is the main meeting room that is still being recorded and live streamed. Everybody can hear what you're saying on YouTube right now.
Oh,
Yes, can you move us to the...
Aren't you moving us out?
I am, but I need time to do this.
Yeah, you just accept the invite to the breakout room.
We didn't get the invite. And I'm right down.
Okay, I can move you, no problem.
Oh, here, now we got the invite.
What an exciting group. The night with the Dufferin Peel friends.
Okay, we're going live streaming now.
I need my beauty rest.
Oh,
Nobody's
there they are. They're back.
they're back.
Tanisha,
The
trustee
microphone's not.
Thomas, all in favor?
We didn't hear what happened.
Nothing, we cannot hear anything.
We didn't hear any.
moved Anisha Thomas just moved adjournment.
Thank
Oh,
you, Nisha.
we didn't hear the report. Okay,
Are you in favor?
we're in favor to adjourn, yes.
Yes, perfect.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
And Dara, good